Occasionally, Hollywood can surprise us all with fresh reinventions or continuations of previously abandoned properties. More times than not though, the cash cows that have given so much already are dusted off for one more storyline. That only succeeds in proving exactly why these franchises should have been left well enough alone. With that in mind, I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 movie franchises that can't be good again, and exactly why. Number 10, Pirates of the Caribbean. With 5 movies under its belt, and a 6th involving actress Margot Robbie on the way, it's safe to say that the pirate franchise's ship hasn't sailed just yet. But does that mean the next installment will be any good? If the rest of the reported cast list is anything to go by, it's not very likely. One of the biggest problems with the franchise struck following At World's End, when the iconic trio of Jack Sparrow, Will Turner, and Elizabeth Swann were torn apart, and the loss of cinema's most badass couple in central roles has been a heavy burden on subsequent stories. Later storylines have long felt repetitive and formulaic. A MacGuffin that either promises unimaginable power or holds a terrible curse must be found through a series of daring and quirky adventures. It's understandable and almost impressive for a franchise with 5 movies that built its entire premise upon a children's ride at Disneyland to have got this far. It just doesn't inspire much hope that our next quest is going to be anything new or different either. Number 9, Transformers. Although Bumblebee seemed to be something of a refreshing experience for many, the franchise that was once so explosively awesome and visually impressive is far too riddled with controversy and repetitiveness to ever revive its former glory. As is the case with many blockbusters that make it past the 3-film mark, the plot of each Transformers movie since the original has been almost identical, save for a few changes of setting and a mix-up of cast, none of which have been enough to stop it from heading into the realms of farce, becoming far more recognizable as just another effects-heavy Michael Bay flick than a good movie. Putting cinematography aside, the script and dialogue for the films has never exactly been Oscar-worthy themselves either. Sure, they're mindless action and passable as background noise, but the old spark has been quickly fading for this franchise for years, and any excitement for future installments has evaporated along with it. Number 8, The Dark Universe. Most of the franchises on this list are guilty of overextending their reach, letting their once fresh idea be drawn out until it's a shadow of its origins. However, no franchise quite did the complete opposite like the Dark Universe. Like many others who met similar fates, the Dark Universe looked to the success of Marvel Studios' The Avengers, and attempted to span their own shared cinematic universe, without, capitalizing on the reasons that the Avengers paid off as well as it did, that being an effective build-up. The potential that the Dark Universe promised was unparalleled within the horror genre, as we've seen many sequels try to spawn long-lasting franchises, but never really a shared universe of this scale. The promise of a modern take on cherished icons such as Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Invisible Man made for this to be an exciting concept. However, the whole thing quickly revealed itself as just an incredibly rushed project, and 2017's dud The Mummy was the final nail in the sarcophagus. Number 7, Saw. Yet another installment in the long since wrapped up horror franchise. That's a game that nobody wanted to play, sadly. With John Kramer, the legendary Jigsaw killer, long since dead, it was left to his disciples to carry on his work in later movies. By the time we get to 2017's Jigsaw though, it's been nearly a decade since Kramer's death, and the new Jigsaw killer feels far more like a cheap copycat than a true extension of the original. The original films were the pinnacle of 2000s horror, combining mysteries and twist endings with disturbing booby traps and body horror, the likes of which we'd never seen on such a scale. However, the formula can become quickly repetitive. No matter how inventive the latest traps are, when the overarching thread of clues isn't there to keep the long-term viewers satisfied. Perhaps Chris Rock's upcoming Spiral project may be able to fill the gap that the franchise left, and continue on to a similar success as its own entity. But it seems all the more likely that it's game over for Saw. Number 6, The Fast and the Furious. Nobody would have believed that a series of movies that seemed to be just another generic adrenaline-fueled spectacle could become a franchise with so much heart and thrill. However, However, sometimes the strength of the underlying messages cannot save a franchise that has simply just had its day. The problem is, the franchise feels very of its time, and not necessarily made to have lasted as long as it has. Whilst there is certainly praise owed to the studios, the action scenes have bordered on ridiculous in later sequels, and the themes the movies are trying for seem to be increasingly harder to get on board with. The latest movies have frequently fallen towards a self-parody of their former glory, and the franchise as a whole just cries out for its formerly smaller scope, with a focus on characters that felt grounded in, realism. With the latest movie essentially enrolling the team in the same school of espionage and infiltration as James Bloody Bond, it is hard to see the franchise ever returning to the humble roots it once suited so damn well. Number 5, the DC Extended Universe. Family disasters, bizarre casting, and a tidal wave of production complications just have not been kind to this world. Man of Steel started off strong enough, showing us a version of Clark Kent who struck just the right balance of bravery and strength of a Kryptonian god, and humble charm of a Smallville reporter. It was in 2014's much anticipated Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice that things really began to fall apart though. Despite treating fans to the most grizzled and powerful Batman we've seen in cinema, character motivations were just a shambles throughout the movie, leading to unconvincing conflicts and, let's say, messy dialogue. In all honesty, when compared to the disaster of tonal inconsistencies that plagued Justice League and the critically unpopular Suicide Squad, it's only 2017's Wonder Woman that stands out as a worthy contender for a great superhero movie. Although the Snyder Cut of Justice League appears to have gotten some fans back on board with the idea of this shared universe, and a Flashpoint movie with Ezra Miller is still to come, it's clear that the once promising franchise is on its last legs here. And even the unparalleled success of the upcoming projects would not save this entire thing from being viewed as a disaster in hindsight. Number 4, Men in Black. Taking Agent J and Agent K out of the 2019 sequel Men in Black International led many fans to feel alienated from a franchise that had offered so much inventive wit and humor. Whilst Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson certainly bring their own comedic chemistry from Thor Ragnarok to the table and help to refresh the franchise for new audiences, the staples of the trilogy that fans remembered so fondly seem to disappear. Although the franchise boasts the same name and premise on paper, it serves more as a light reboot than a progression of what came before. For some, the sequel is innocent enough in its intentions to further the franchise. Whilst respecting that both Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones agreed during the production of the third film that their story felt concluded and would not be interested in further sequels. However, a vocal majority of critics and moviegoers seem to agree that, at best, International is simply a passable film, with nowhere near the same level of excitement or optimism that had come before for any future projects. In short, with no Smith or Lee Jones, this franchise will likely continue to be anything but out of this world. Number 3, Star Wars. It's no secret that the Star Wars sequels have had a very, let's say, divisive effect upon devoted fans. But then, their production has only been consistent in its ability to be inconsistent, with every new episode feeling like it's made to contradict the other. In the same way that the sequels have garnered so much disapproval in the fandom, however, shows such as The Clone Wars and The Mandalorian have been undeniable successes on Disney+. Whilst Disney allows the cinematic universe to cool off for a while, perhaps the future prosperity of Star Wars is in television and streaming platforms. It's a perfect format to rectify issues of pacing and the lack of a planned scope for story progressions. Characters who might be brushed aside under feature film time restrictions can be fleshed out in ways that the movies struggle to realize, and a comprehensive timeline of events could be more successfully established. With the movies even calling themselves episodes, it seems the most logical transition for Star Wars to make. The cinematic future of the franchise, however, looks ever more unlikely to recapture the magic that the universe's most beloved space opera once did. Number 2, The Wizarding World, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. With the story of Harry Potter all but tied up, the Fantastic Beasts saga has been carrying the torch for the franchise since 2017. But the films have consistently been riddled with controversies. even before those that directly relate to the films. For a start, J.K. Rowling's casting and defense of Johnny Depp during a time where the media were convinced of his guilt in assaulting partner Amber Heard caused a huge backlash towards the franchise and its creator. During 2020, Rowling would continue to aggravate fans on Twitter when she embarked on a series of anti-trans tweets too. This, amongst other things, has led the franchise to become extremely unsettling and uncomfortable for many fans. The Fantastic Beasts trilogy promised to be the same magic of what had come before, but with a thorough exploration into the wizarding world, which could reveal the backstories of fan favorites such as Albus Dumbledore and their long-rumored sexuality in much more detail than before. However, this became yet another missed opportunity and sour topic amongst fans that has led many to deem the remaining films just discouraging, with more controversies such as Depp's recent departure weighing on the upcoming sequel before it's even finished filming. It seems unlikely they will ever rekindle the enthusiasm towards upcoming projects ever again. Number 1. Terminator. The stories of the Terminator went from some of the most critically acclaimed science fiction movies of all time to a joke amongst cinema goers. The franchise has become an unimaginably embarrassing mess, and that's coming from the guy who's not had a haircut in 20 months, preferring to spend its run trying to retroactively cancel out the worst of its sequels as opposed to trying to bring something fresh to the formula. Whilst the first two installments, 1984's The Terminator and 1992's Terminator 2 Judgment Day, seem to be universally recognized as the only good movies of the lot, the remarkable fact that a sequel that takes the franchise in a new direction has been attempted and failed 4 times now stands as a true testament of how defeated the property has become. From a cheap parody to wiping out the Terminators and Skynet forever, to even cancelling every movie to that point, the many attempts to push Terminator into a new era have been painfully awkward to watch as a fan of the original content. Although there are still avid lovers of Arnold's iconic cyborg, the Terminator is not a franchise that most fans would be happy to see come back.